I have due respect for India, tremendous respect for India, but 44 years ago, India and China were on a par as an economy. Now Chinese economy is almost 6 times that of the Indian economy. I'm always staggered by the disparity between these two countries.
嗨，欢迎大家来到果果的新闻频道。本期重要看点，各位观众大家好。你知道吗？44年前，中国和印度的经济规模完全一样，但是今天中国经济已是印度的6倍。这个巨大的差距让人震惊，更让人意外的是，著名的哈佛教授提出了修昔底德陷阱理论，认为中美必有一战。但是高志凯公开挑战这个理论，他说这完全是幻想。为什么？因为这个教授忘记了一个致命因素，那什么？核武器啊！高志凯甚至提出了自己的和平必然论，直接与哈佛教授针锋相对。他还说，如果中美开战，那将是人类的末日浩劫。这场思想交锋到底谁对谁错？中美关系的真相究竟是什么？今天我们就来深度解析高志凯的惊人观点，请看前方发来的报道。
Our next speaker is Victor Gao. I hope you're going to be equally even-handed. So the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I promise I will be more even-handed. It is a great pleasure for me to be here, and I would like to thank ICAS for hosting this very important seminar. I mentioned just now that timing cannot be better because it really dovetails with the big event in Beijing. Now, 10 years ago, if the United States stayed away from BRI, it stayed away from a concept. Today, when the United States continues to stay away, it is staying away from a gathering of 153 countries. So if anyone here thinks it's not a big loss for the United States, tell me, and I would like to argue with you. Now, there are so many things about China-US relations we can talk about. And China-US relations is such that everyone knows a little bit about, no one knows the totality about it, and it keeps changing. So when I'm thinking about this China-US relations, I think I just want to share with you my views on one thing at the very, very top. You know, there is a very distinguished American scholar who wrote a book about Destined for War and tries to apply that conclusion to Thucydides' trap theory to China-US relations, meaning China and the United States are destined for war. I felt uncomfortable with that book ever since I read the book review. And I spent quite a few years to figure out whether there was something wrong with that theory when applied to China-US relations. I now realized, and I'm convinced, it's a fallacy if anyone wants to apply that to China-US relations. Now, I say this with due respect to the professor himself, to the school he is from, and to the university in Boston. I came from New Haven, so don't be surprised if people from New Haven sometimes talk about that bigger university in Boston negatively. But I do believe it is a fallacy. Why? Because the professor analyzed all the cases of war and came up with this theory. But he forgets that all the cases of war he analyzed are wars in conventional war. Whereas China and the United States are not only two conventional powers, but more importantly, two of the most important nuclear powers. So there is something missing. You cannot apply conclusion you scientifically arrived at analyzing conventional wars and apply the conclusion thereof to two nuclear powers. That leads me to my own theory, if any. It's called the inevitability of peace between China and the United States. Why? People here in the United States say there are two things inevitable. Inevitable to die, probably except Elon Musk or his followers, and inevitability to pay tax. Uncle Sam is getting after you if you refuse to pay tax. Now I added another one. That is the inevitability of peace. Inevitability of peace doesn't mean we need to love each other, but it requires us to respect each other and to live and let live. That means I want to live, I need to let you live, and you need to live, and you need to let me live. See, it's very even-handed. And the inevitability of peace cannot be achieved without each side accumulating enough strength so neither side will really wrongly second-guess each other and jump the gun in the wrong direction. Therefore, I do believe the future of China-US relations is based on inevitability of peace. And I would like to debate with that professor in that bigger university in Boston to see whether any one of us would agree that there is a fallacy in that destined for war policy applied to China and the United States. And I would consider that fallacy as a poisoning effect on China-US relations, including Professor Swing, who just now mentioned about this tendency of talking about war, either involving Taiwan or otherwise between China and the United States. Allow me to mention one thing. War between China and the United States will be real Armageddon for both China and the United States and for human sapient species. So I would like to urge all of us to do the right thing, that is to promote peace, rather than insanely agitate for war between China and the United States. Now, based on this inevitability of peace, because there are so many problems in China-US relations, what should we do? I think the United States government has characterized China-US relations as cooperation, competition, and confrontation. I would like to ask all of us, what do China and the United States compete for? What do we compete for? Do we compete in men's basketball or diving, especially women's diving, or table tennis, for example? No. We have each of us our own strengths and weaknesses, and China and the United States are two countries so different that you should never expect that China should be exactly the same like the United States, or the United States exactly the same as China. And no one here in Washington should really expect that China wants to impose our system or ideology or way of life onto the United States. That means eventually the only right thing between China and the United States is, allow me to mention, your God for you and my God for me. If China wants to impose its God, whatever it's defined, onto the United States, it's a war between China and the United States, because no one in the United States wants to live under a Chinese God. Likewise, if the United States wants to impose your God, whatever you define it, onto China, it will backfire. So, your God for you, my God for me, I want to live, you want to live, I want to let you live, and you won't let me live. That is the only right thing. And this will lead to what? The only right way between China and the United States. That is the inevitability of peace.
She suggested that at a back situation,
China's neighbors, as well as for the American allies, the real choice is not between China versus the United States. The real choice is whether China or the United States is doing the right thing. Now, it will be absurd if China does the right thing and you want to oppose it. It would be equally absurd if the United States does the right thing and you want to oppose it. It really depends on the positions of China and the United States. For example, when the United States bails out of WHO, to follow US leadership will be suicidal. And if you really follow US leadership in bailing out of WHO or other international organizations, for example, you are really throwing a wedge into the international order we are living through. And also, it will be ludicrous to expect that everything China stands for is wrong. No. Why? How can you expect a country completely transforming itself in a matter of 44 years and becoming a leading nation in so many lines of activities? I have due respect for India, tremendous respect for India, but 44 years ago, India and China were on a par as an economy. Now Chinese economy is almost 6 times that of the Indian economy. I'm always staggered by the disparity between these two countries in a matter of 4 decades. There must be something that China has been doing right And that something is being missed here in the United States. Therefore, I think China and the United States really need to understand each other better and get along with each other better. Now, we are talking about a summit meeting on the sideline of G20 in San Francisco in November. Yeah, the APEC summit in San Francisco. I do hope we can think even bigger things for China and the United States. I think we can really make great progress. For China-US relations, while being fully aware of the challenges and the daunting difficulties, I remain an optimist because I think these two countries can only live and let live.
精彩视频看完了，高教授的此次演讲展现了其作为中国学者在国际场合的睿智、理性与战略定力。其核心论述超越了简单的双边竞争叙事，旨在构建一种基于相互尊重、以核时代现实的大国关系新范式。演讲的立论高远，直指西方国际关系理论中的修昔底德陷阱谬误啊！高教授一针见血地指出，将该理论套用于中美两个核大国身上是一种幻想，因为基于常规战争的历史案例分析，无法推导出核大国间必然冲突的结论。由此，他创造性地提出了和平的必然性，要和平这一核心论点。其逻辑基石是相互确保生存的核威慑现实，即我想活也得让你活，也是一种极为务实且深刻的战略清醒。在方法论上，高教授倡导你神归你，我神归我的共存哲学，反对任何形式的意识形态输出以制度霸权，强调中美应尊重彼此差异，在竞争中找到共存的底线。这有力地回应了西方某些势力试图对中国进行制度同化或意识形态围剿的企图。尤为精彩的是，他以中国和印度的发展对比为例，通过44年间经济总量差距拉大的客观事实，巧妙地论证了中国做对了一些事情，从而委婉却有力地证明了中国道路的成功与合理性，增强了中国话语的说服力。整体而言，此次演讲是一次将中国立场融入西方学术话语体系的成功实践。高教授没有进行情绪化的反驳，而是以严谨的逻辑、历史的纵深和核时代的宏观视角，解构中美必有一战的宿命论调，积极塑造了中国作为负责任大国、和平维护者的形象，为复杂的中美关系注入了难得的理性声音。谢谢大家观看，喜欢请点赞、评论加订阅，你的支持是我最大的动力。比心，明天见，拜拜。